A Journey Through the Realms of Madness. A 20 to 30 gram mushroom trip report, posted to the Vivec Discord. I'm not the most seasoned of trippers, but I've had my fair share of interesting and thought-provoking trips. In the summer of 2022, I was on a camping trip with my friends. Some of them were planning on tripping with me, but backed out last second. It was most likely due to the fact that I had 160 grams total split between the Pensacola and Baby Burma strains I had saved up weeks prior. Me and another buddy, who hadn't planned on tripping, had a simple 1 to 2 gram dose, but it put me in a comatose state for a couple of hours. All I remember was I was sitting in front of a fire wrapped in a sleeping bag, and the sun was just starting to set when I started tripping. The next time I opened my eyes, it was pitch black outside. The visuals I got were blissful and reminiscent of events that were happening in my life at the time. I described it to my friend as if I was peering into heaven's pearly gates. We enjoyed our stay and headed back to town, not too long after we arrived there. I chewed through my 80 grams of Pensacola fairly quickly in the passing week, and I would have to assume I had around 20 to 30 grams left just sitting around. One night, I thought naively to myself, why not get rid of the stuff I've got left? Little did I know I would be in for a hellish experience. After I gagged and pounded back the container, crumbs included, I sat in bed listening to some monkish praying, because that's what put me to bed at the time. About 20 minutes in, I could feel the telltale signs of a panic attack settling in. I said out loud to myself, oh, not now. My hands started to tingle as my heart started racing and my breathing became more ragged and laboured. My stomach started to ache and throb, and so I rushed quietly outside for a puff of my joint, and that is when it started to dawn on me that I was not going to remember this night fondly. It was getting close to midnight, and my parents were already half asleep. Little did they know I was having a full-on emotional breakdown. As the visuals came rushing in, dark streaming patterns flooded my vision as I took the first hit of my first joint. My heart racing, I could barely speak as I muttered, "Holy fucking shit," to myself. The beautiful kaleidoscopic patterns I usually get were replaced by horrifying visages of demonic creatures I never thought I would see. I finished my first joint in what seemed like a minute, and with my panic attack not getting any better, I started on the second one. With every breath I could see more but feel less, as if my very soul was being ripped out of my body. As the night went on, I spotted a figure in the distance. I moved my head to peek around the corner, but it's as if this figure emerged out of reality itself. I closed my eyes thinking it was a trick of my mind, but I was sorely mistaken. It didn't matter if my eyes were open or closed. The figure stood there glaring at me, and when the mess of visuals finally came to a clearing, what I could only describe was Cthulhu himself standing before me. I could see the tentacles from his mouth and his glowing eyes staring at my very soul. He looked as if he was leaning over to me, like he was intrigued or studying me. His many eyes were shaped in an upside-down cross. I was in a staring contest with the devil himself. As I stared, it's almost as if he cast a curse upon me. The more I stared, the more I wanted to look away. But the more I looked away, the more I feared what he would do if I continued to do so. My vision darkened, and my awareness of my surroundings all but faded away as I started the third joint. I thought of my family and friends. What if I overdosed and died? What would they think of me? And in an instant I knew that if I were to die now, I would bring shame upon everyone I knew. So fuck it, I thought. It was me and certain death staring each other down in a game of chicken. Who would look away first, I thought to myself, knowing damn well the god of madness would never let his eyes off me. I got halfway through my fourth joint and had to call it quits. It was 2 a.m. at that point. I couldn't believe the amount of time that had passed in what seemed like a blink of an eye. I headed back inside as quietly as I could, but it was no use. I stumbled around, bumping into the construction site that is my home, but thankfully my parents did not wake up. Thank God they had the door closed, because the next thing I did was grabbing the ice maker out of the freezer to chew on some ice, in a bid to calm my nerves. I hurried back downstairs into my room and into the bathroom. At this point I didn't care how much noise I made, I just wanted to get this fucking shit over and done with. I shoveled ice into my mouth for a solid hour, and as that time passed I saw a kaleidoscopic pattern of black shapes surrounding my vision, almost as if I was in a prison cell of darkness. Any time I'd close my eyes, I saw glimpses of that horrific thing. So I tried my best to keep my eyes open, but it was no use. With it being as late as it was, and with my heart still pounding, I was weak. I wasn't ready to handle what would come next. When I looked in the mirror, I saw myself. I looked into my eyes, shifting and swirling. I looked down and up again, and as if in an instant the trip started to quickly die down. Within a matter of minutes, the visuals had started to calm down to a point of ceasing entirely. I was relieved, if anything, to know that it was going to end, and when it was calm enough, I headed straight to bed. If I were to deal with that any longer, I was sure I was going to die. And as I laid there in bed, I overheard my parents talking to each other outside my door, and I prayed to God that they wouldn't come in. As I heard their voices recede, I pondered why I even did this in the very first place. And the simple answer was, I got cocky. I thought I could dominate something I had absolutely no control over, and with the amount I consumed that night, and with the small hiatus I had from shrooms, I was destined for failure, and fail I did. I didn't have any dreams that night. I woke up to my mum knocking on my door, and she asked me where the ice dispenser went. I don't know, I lied and said with a shrug. I was still in shock about what had happened last night. I walked back upstairs at 1 in the afternoon into the kitchen where my mum was cooking and got a bite to eat. I chugged my first glass of water, and as I started talking to my mum, she brought up the ice maker yet again. I just made up some stupid story on the spot of how some ice thief came in the night and stole the ice dispenser from the freezer. She chuckled, almost as if she knew what happened last night. I swallowed my pride and told her a partial truth about how I had a nightmare about having a panic attack. I went back to my room and pretended to be surprised about how I found the ice maker in the sink. As the days passed and turned into weeks, I realised a very valuable lesson about psychedelics. Never ever go into these unprepared. Even if you think you are, you never truly will be. Every trip is different, and every time you try it, you will get a different experience from it. I've had problems smoking weed ever since that day, and if I do smoke, I shake as if I'm cold even though I'm not, and my heart rate shoots up. Recently, I've been having panic attacks when I do smoke, and I was taken to emergency care for one of them. Maybe it was the expired weed edibles my buddy had in his fridge, but now when I smoke I do not feel comfortable in my own skin. It will never be the same for me. I fear I have some form of PTSD from that shroom trip 2 years ago. I try not to think about it, but when I do, I start to shake. It's gotten better with time, mind you, but still, it's never going to leave my mind. I advise anyone planning to do a big dose like that to strongly reconsider. Anytime you think of doing a big dose, take this as a warning to never ever do it. Take it slow for Christ's sake, because if you don't, shrooms will knock you on your ass and tell you no. It will teach you a lesson, and you will never forget. And I broke what trust I had not only with myself, but with the shrooms as well. I just sincerely hope that the next trip I have goes well. Because, well, if it doesn't, I wouldn't blame myself from going sober from shrooms altogether. I've partially quit from weed at the moment of writing this as well. THC and me do not mix well, but CBD at least helps with my anxiety, I guess. I'm truly blessed to have survived that encounter. It's both a traumatic experience but also a life lesson, and I think that's something everyone can take out of an experience like this. Just learn from what you do. Take what good you can from the experiences you get, because those good times come in very short supply. Love who you can when you can, because not everyone is going to be around forever. You can make lasting change in your life if you try. But drugs, they do not get more fun as time goes on. Do not fuck your life up like I did.